For most of the time I've been cubing, 7x7 has been one of those events where there's pretty much just one cube that everyone uses. 7x7 hardware improvement has definitely lagged behind that of events like 3x3, and so when a new cube would come out, typically it was the first major 7x7 release in quite a while, and chances are that it was quite a bit better than its predecessors. So pretty much everyone would switch to using that cube until the next one came out. Fast forward to 2019, and now we have 3 7x7s that all have the potential to be the main speed cubes of many cubers. The Yushin Haze 7M, the X-Man designed Spark M, and the Moyu Alfu 7x7M are all great cubes, and each have their own strengths and weaknesses. So let's take a closer look at these cubes so that you can figure out which 7x7 is right for you. To start off, let's get the specs out of the way for each of these cubes. The Spark is the smallest and lightest of the 3 cubes, measuring 66.5mm across and weighing just over 196 grams. The Haze 7M is a little bit bigger and heavier with a side dimension of 67.5mm and a weight of 204 grams. Finally, the Alfu GTS-M is the biggest and heaviest cube here at 68mm across and 234 grams. However, despite being the biggest and heftiest cube here, the Alfu is actually the cheapest cube in the video, and by quite a decent margin, coming in at $45 on thecubicle.com as opposed to the $60 price tag on each of the other 2 cubes. So that was definitely a lot of information all at once, and hopefully you were able to follow it, but either way, let's move on to the aspects of these cubes that matter the most. First, let's check out the turning of each of these 3 cubes. The Alfu GTS-M is buttery smooth with a tiny bit of scratchiness when you turn fast on the outer layers. If you have the Outrong GTS-M 5x5, you'll likely find that the Alfu has a similar feeling, apart from the speed. Unlike the Outrong, the Alfu GTS-M is quite sluggish, which is personally my main gripe with this cube. I've tried speeding it up with some D&M 37, but that didn't work very well, and so I haven't been all that satisfied with the turning. However, different people have different preferences, and so if you happen to like slower or more controllable cubes, then maybe this turning won't bother you at all. The Chi Spark 7x7M is pretty much the opposite of the Alfu. It's super fast, has a satisfying crispy feeling, and can also become pretty smooth if you add a considerable amount of lubrical silk to the cube. Additionally, I've noticed that when I turn the different layers separately, I notice a slight difference in feeling on this cube. The inner layers are a little bit smoother and the outer layers are crispier. However, this cube does maintain nearly identical speeds on all 3 layers, so this difference in feeling doesn't negatively affect performance at all. The Yushin Haze 7M sort of falls in between the Alfu and Spark as far as the turning goes. Like the Alfu, the Haze 7M doesn't have an incredibly distinct feeling to it when turning. Rather, it has a smooth and slightly crunchy feeling. However, the Haze definitely has a speed closer to the Sparks, which makes me like the turning on this cube a lot as well. Additionally, I've definitely noticed some similarities in feeling between this cube and the previous Yushin 7x7. That's not necessarily a bad thing, and it makes sense given that they're from the same company, but I did find the turning surprisingly familiar when I got this cube, so I figured I'd mention that. Moving on, the next main category that I wanted to take a look at is the tendency of these cubes to lock up and pop. With the Haze 7, I really don't have to worry too much about these problems at all. I've had this cube for the longest amount of time out of the 3 cubes here, and I don't think I've gotten more than 2 or 3 pops on it in the couple hundred solves that I've done, which is fantastic for a 7x7. This is definitely an area in which the Haze excels, and it's exactly why I chose to use this cube as my main when I competed at Northeast Champs a few weeks ago. Sure, in practice pops aren't any fun, but when I'm competing in big cubes, I want to avoid getting pops above all else. Getting a pop in competition on 7x7 is a total nightmare, and so I don't want to take any unnecessary risks. As you could probably guess, the other cubes don't do quite as well in this area. The Spark has somewhat frequent pops and occasionally gets those lockups where the centerpieces get all jumbled up together and you really have to pry them back into place. Honestly, the pops aren't that hard to fix because I can just push the piece back in. But the occasional lockups are definitely solve ruining, and so I don't feel as confident when solving on the Spark, knowing that a pop or lockup isn't terribly unlikely. The Alfu is sort of a similar situation to the Spark, but it's not quite as bad. I have gotten a few more pops than I would like to on the Alfu, but I haven't really had any problems with bad lockups, which in my opinion are worse. So for this category, the Haze 7 definitely wins between the 3 cubes, and the Alfu takes second place. So let's go over these cubes one last time, starting off with the X-Man Spark M. I find that with this cube, I'm always very excited to do solves on it, causing me to do longer practice sessions, and I definitely enjoy using it the most. The feeling and turning is probably its main selling point, and for good reason, because those aspects of the cube are pretty fantastic. Unfortunately, however, as I mentioned a minute ago, the Spark is also a bit more prone to popping than the Haze or even the Alfu. So it's not perfect, and if you get this cube, you may find yourself tightening it up a bit if you get frustrated with the popping. Moving on to the Haze, I think that this cube is probably the best all-around 7x7 on the market. It has a nice but simple feeling, average to fast speed, and great fluidity. Most importantly, it's extremely reliable, and so you probably won't get very frustrated with it. The only thing I don't love about this cube is that it doesn't make me keep wanting to solve 7x7 for as long as the Spark does. The feeling just isn't quite as interesting, and so even though it's super consistent and reliable, I don't get as excited about doing solves with it. Of course, that's really not that big of a deal, and I don't think that's any reason not to buy the Haze. Finally, we have the Alfu. This cube has a nice, smooth feeling that I don't have many problems with and decent reliability. However, I just can't get over how slow this cube is in comparison to the other two. I can't turn as quickly, and as a result, I get noticeably slower times on the Alfu. However, something worth remembering about this cube is that it's only $45, which is $15 cheaper than the other two cubes. So I don't think that this cube is really meant to be quite on the same level as the Haze and Spark in terms of performance. I think it's more of a middle ground for people who want a solid magnetic 7x7 without spending a ton of money. Personally, I find myself going back and forth between the Spark and the Haze. I've definitely ruled out the Alfu as being main potential because it just doesn't work for me as well in solves. However, I haven't quite decided what I like more, the solid reliability of the Haze or the amazing feeling that the Spark has. So for now, I think I'll probably stick with the Haze in competition and split my practice at home between the Haze and the Spark. So that's it for this comparison video. Hopefully you now have a better idea of which one of these cubes you want to buy. If you would like to buy any of these cubes, the links are in the description below to purchase. And if you already have one of these cubes, leave a comment down below and let me know what you think of it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!